2018 was an awesome year for video games. There were so many awesome video games that came out on the PS4, the Xbox One, and the Nintendo Switch. It was hard to keep up with all of them. You had huge third-party multi-platforms. You had huge first-party console exclusives. Just awesome stuff from all companies. A really solid year for the world of video games, and just so many video games to play. But as exciting as 2018 was for the world of video games, I think 2019 is going to be even more exciting because we're going to be getting new hardware announcements from both Sony and Microsoft. Now, we've heard some rumblings about what Microsoft is doing, potentially launching multiple SKUs at the launch of their successor to the Xbox One. But Sony's been a bit more quiet. There have been some rumors, some crazy rumors. Things like, should Sony copy the Nintendo Switch? Maybe they're going down that road and emulating sort of what the Nintendo Switch is doing. And a lot of people are questioning what Sony is actually going to do with the PlayStation 5. And in this video, I want to talk about what they should be doing with the PlayStation 5. Should they go after and emulate the success of the Nintendo Switch? Should they do other things? And what things need to improve with the Sony PlayStation 5? Sit back, relax, make sure you subscribe to the channel, and let's talk about what we need from the PlayStation 5.
Hey, RGT 85. Hey, Sean.
Oh my God, it's Stevie Richards! So the first thing we need to talk about with the PlayStation 5 is the controller of the system. Now, I like the DualShock 4 controller, but I do think it has one major problem, and that's the battery life. The DualShock controller is a staple in gaming, but the DualShock controller had one major problem, like I said, a poor battery life. It seems like every time I went to play my PS4, the controller was low on battery, which honestly was a bit annoying. The alleged battery life on a full charge for the DualShock 4 was around 4 to 8 hours, but it always seemed much lower than that whenever I play my PS4. Plus, that's still way behind what the Xbox One controller and the Nintendo Switch Pro controller does in terms of how long you can use it. Obviously, the DualShock 4 has a lot of technology in it, but I feel like some of that could be changed or even removed completely. The light function on the controller seems to drain the controller battery very quick, and while you can dim it and turn it off, I don't know what really it plays a role in when you're playing games or anything like that. The touchpad on the PS4 controller was kinda cool at first, admittedly, but most developers didn't really do anything with it. Also, the DualShock 4 has gyro controls, something that I feel like most people have forgot, because a lot of games don't even utilize the gyro in the controller. Infamous Second Son was one of the few games that integrated gyro control and touchpad support towards the start of the system's lifecycle, but it seemed like these two ideas never really seemed to catch on with the PS4 audience. Maybe technology is better now than when the DualShock 4 was initially conceived and released, and these things wouldn't necessarily limit the battery life on the eventual DualShock 5, but I really feel like Sony should find a way to increase the stock battery life for the controller without having to use things like cables or third-party accessories. Another area that I feel Sony definitely took an L in when it came to the PS4 has to be this whole cross-platform play situation. They were really steadfast against cross-platform play, and I really feel like cross-platform play needs to be a staple in the PS5. A big move in the current generation of gaming was, of course, the embracing of cross-platform play between Microsoft and Nintendo. Popular games like Rocket League and Fortnite took over online gaming, and a lot of people thought, wouldn't it be fun to play with anyone regardless of the platform? Microsoft and Nintendo went with this notion, and cross-platform play between the Xbox One and the Nintendo Switch is now commonplace for many online experiences. Hell, even indie developers can get on this, so it's a really amazing feat. Sony, however, was the odd man looking in on this situation. They pretty much wanted nothing to do with cross-platform play, using the line that the PlayStation is the best place to play. And while that may have been true, the owners of PS4 consoles still wanted the option to be able to play with their friends across other platforms. Sony eventually half-assed caved in and allowed cross-platform play with Fortnite, but it never really expanded beyond that. Now, does Sony need to fully embrace cross-platform play? I don't really think so. When you're on top of the mountain and you're looking at business decisions and revenue streams and things like that, obviously you're going to do what's going to get you the most revenue and make you the most dollars. But I think from a consumer response standpoint, they do need to embrace cross-platform play. It's not going to help their bottom line at the end of the day, but I think it's just a show of goodwill and good faith that these other companies are willing to work together, and Sony just looks like the old angry man saying, "Get off my lawn!" Like, people are still going to play their games on their console of choice, so just having cross-platform play really brings the online community together in these games and really gives more life to these games beyond the initial release. Up next, we have to talk about something very important with the PS5, something that both Microsoft and Sony are guilty with their launches of new consoles, and that has to be money, 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 money. If the history of video game console sales has taught us anything, it's that there is a maximum price point that the mass market is willing to pay for a console. The PlayStation 2 was an absolute monster, and one of the finest consoles pretty much ever, with an insane library of games. Most people expected the PlayStation 3 to roll over the competition, but Sony had to sell the PS3 at launch for $500, which severely hurt the system and the previous momentum from the past generation, and let the Xbox 360 get a jump in terms of sales. Now with this current generation, it's actually flip-flopped, and with the Xbox One launching at $500, the PS4 launching at $400, what ended up happening? Sony ran away at the starting line and never really looked back. So what have we learned from this? $500 just seems too high for the mass market on new hardware. The Xbox One X sold pretty well according to NPD reports, and maybe sold beyond what Microsoft was anticipating, but still the $500 price point seems to be for a niche audience and not really widespread. PlayStation 5 is going to come out with a lot of technology in terms of the hardware, but I think history has taught us that $400 is the sweet spot for the launch of a console. Sony doesn't really need to repeat the PS2 to PS3 cycle this generation, and give Microsoft a way to sneak in some early sales if they want dominance in the marketplace. So really, that $400 price point I think is very important for the PS5. I think Sony is going to pursue that as well after seeing what happened with the Xbox One and of course their PlayStation 3. So my fourth point with the PlayStation 5 is something that a lot of people have sort of a take it or leave it approach to it. Me personally, I say take it. I want this in the system, and that has to be backwards compatibility. The PS4 has sold a ton of consoles and a ton of games this generation, with some of them like Spider-Man and God of War being some of the best games we've seen in a long time. While the PlayStation 3 had a sluggish start, towards the end of the console, we saw a ton of games over the lifespan of the system that people wanted to play again, or play for the first time after switching from the Xbox 360 to the PS4. The PS4, though, of course, did not have backwards compatibility with the PS3 in a traditional sense, instead trying to push PlayStation Now as the alternative for that. While some people might like PlayStation Now, I think the general consensus is that proper backwards compatibility is more in line with what people actually wanted. One of the biggest strengths of the Xbox One, in my opinion, has to be the backwards compatibility, allowing for not only 360 games, but even some original Xbox games to run on the platform as well, with some crazy enhancements in terms of graphics. Well, you might say to yourself, well, the Nintendo Switch doesn't have backwards compatibility, and Nintendo's been doing great with reselling Wii U games. And while that sentiment is correct, the Wii U also sold horribly, so I look at it as more of a recuperation on these games that didn't sell all that great for Nintendo. Being able to pop in your PS4 disc into your PS5 would be great, and hopefully the positivity surrounding Xbox One's backwards compatibility will make Sony realize that backwards compatibility is important to most gamers, and they will implement it into the PS5. And of course, we have to end this with the title of the video. Should the PlayStation 5 copy the Nintendo Switch? Is this a direction that Sony needs to go into? I say no. One of the big rumors circulating around the PS5 is that they may try and emulate something similar to the Nintendo Switch. After seeing the crazy turnaround for Nintendo from the Wii U to the Switch, it probably looks like an attractive option. Of course, remote play was available on the PS Vita and the PS4, so it's not outside the realm of possibility for Sony to potentially expand this beyond to a hybrid console. However, I honestly don't want to see Sony go down that road. Don't get me wrong, I think the PSP and the Vita were fine platforms, but it always seemed like Sony themselves got bored with both handhelds and would focus on their console division instead. And while Sony probably has the technology to do something like a Nintendo Switch that would honestly be probably more powerful as well, I just don't think that's the avenue they should go down with the PS5. Microsoft is more than likely making a dedicated home console with no portable aspect, and Nintendo for the past 15 plus years has just been sort of marching to the beat of their own drum. So I feel like Sony needs to focus their efforts on what is making them so successful in the home console marketplace currently. Now, could they potentially have an attachment or an accessory with the PS5 that would be able to mimic the Nintendo Switch, where it would be an option instead of the main function of the console? Maybe. And honestly, that might even work out for Sony. But as far as a Sony Switch, I think they are better off without going down that road. Alright, and those are a bunch of things I want to see with the PlayStation 5. I think it's pretty reasonable. I think most people want to see these sort of improvements, but I definitely want to know what you guys want to see from the PlayStation 5. Are you even interested in the PlayStation 5? Is Microsoft winning you back with all these new studio acquisitions, or are you fine with your Nintendo Switch? Me personally, I'm going to end up buying all the platforms, but I think that this would ensure that the PS5 is super successful. So let me know in the comments section down below what you guys want to see from the PS5. And of course, thank you guys for checking out this video. If you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications. Check out other videos on the channel. We're doing all sorts of crazy videos on here. And as always, I will catch you guys on the next video. Later.